Good afternoon. Welcome to 2024 League of Women Voters Forum for the candidates for Judicial Circuit 7, a nonpartisan political organization of women and men that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters of Prince George's County, Maryland, was founded in 1921 as one of the first local leagues in the United States. I am Gloria Johnson, president of the League of Women Voters of Prince George's County. I hereby introduce to you the candidates for Judicial Circuit 7 for Prince George's County in alphabetical order by last names. Darren Sebastian Johnson, Stenise Lanez Roll, Michael Sheehan, Sherry Nicole Simpkins, Donnell Wilfred Turner. The League of Women Voters Forums are our opportunity to educate the voters of this community. The Maryland County Circuit Courts are grouped into 8 judicial circuits. The Circuit Court for Prince George's County shares the 7th Judicial Circuit with the Circuit Courts for Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's counties. The Circuit Court for Prince George's County currently has 23 full-time judges who are assisted by 7 full-time magistrates in the family division, as well as 15 retired judges who were recalled for part-time service. A note on the appointment and election process to enhance your understanding of why we have only 5 current openings. Since 1970, each Maryland governor has established judicial nominating commissions to review the qualifications of judicial applicants. In most instances, the governor then appoints a new judge from the list of persons recommended by the court's judicial nominating commission. After appointment, the new judge takes an oath of office to uphold the Constitution and laws of Maryland and serve as a judge of the Circuit Court until conclusion of the next general election. Every judge for the circuit must stand for election. However, anyone meeting the requirements of the Maryland Constitution may run against the appointed judge. The person certified by the election results then serves a 15-year term as judge of the Circuit Court. The Maryland Constitution requires that all Circuit Court judges are a citizen of the United States, qualified to vote in Maryland, a Maryland resident for at least 5 years, a resident of county for at least 6 months prior to appointment or election, admitted to practice law in Maryland, and at least 30 years old at the time of election or appointment, and most distinguished for integrity, wisdom, and sound legal knowledge. In Maryland, the Circuit Court is the general jurisdiction trial court. Circuit courts have exclusive original jurisdiction over jury trials in civil and criminal matters and non-jury trials in equity matters involving family law and other matters. Now, regarding the forum today, each of the candidates who you will meet later received an emailed message in which they were asked to execute a written agreement acknowledging they were willing to abide by the rules of this forum. Each candidate has executed an agreement to be bound by League of Women Voters rules. The candidates forum will be moderated by a trained neutral member who also serves as vice president of the League of Women Voters, Dr. Gail Clark, who will ask all candidates questions provided by members of the community and of the League. She will also be assisted by a Bowie University honor student who we are training as a co-moderator, Angelo Price Estrada. To ensure fair and equitable opportunities for all candidates, the forum will be conducted pursuant to the following rules. Each candidate will be given a 2-minute uninterrupted opportunity for an opening. Questions during the forum will be presented to candidates by the forum moderator and co-moderators only. Questions for candidates have been solicited from members of the community as well as League of Women Voters members. Questions must be general and applicable to all members of the forum panel. Each candidate will be provided 1 minute, that is 60 seconds, to respond to the questions presented by the moderator. There is no physical timekeeper, but our producer, Professor Mimi Machado Luchez, will signal electronically when 15 seconds are left, and when the stop sign is raised, the candidates are asked to stop speaking. You can, however, finish your sentence. The list of rules have been posted online, and therefore I am not going to go in depth with any other rules. There will, however, be no interchange between candidates because the League of Women Voters of Prince George's County does not host debates. At this time, I would like to introduce your moderator for the afternoon, Dr. Gail Clark, and she is the standing vice president of the League of Women Voters of Prince George's County. She has a training co-moderator from the Bowie University Honor Student Program, and he is a new League of Women Voters member, Angelo Price Estrada. Dr. Gail, you may take over.
Thank you, Gloria. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. We look forward to your various responses to our questions. You will be sharing your viewpoints, so our voters will be informed as they go to the polls. So we have the first opportunity to share with us your opening statement. We will begin with candidate Johnson.
All right. Thank you. And if I could make a point of correction, there are only 4 seats for the Seventh Circuit, and that's the seats currently held by myself, Stenise Roll, Cherie Simpkins, and Donnell Turner. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Darren Johnson. I thank you for this opportunity. First, let me say I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and let you know a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Prince George's County resident. I was educated in Prince George's County Public Schools. I graduated from Largo High School, eventually matriculating to Howard University and ultimately UDC David A. Clark School of Law for my law degree. I practiced in the county, in Baltimore County, for almost 10 years before serving the federal government and writing all the appeals for the Department of Agriculture. And after that, I was selected by the 24th Circuit Court judges to be a magistrate, a family magistrate, meaning I dealt with all matters from divorce, custody, and child support. Over a 5-year period, including the pandemic, I saw roughly 12,800 and so people during my time. I was eventually elevated to the circuit court bench last year, and part of that process was being interviewed by several bar associations throughout the state, as well as a nominating committee made up of everyday citizens, from doctors to priests, some lawyers, making a decision that I had not only the legal skills, but the temperament to serve this community. And I just want to say that it has been an absolute pleasure consider my time as a magistrate and now as a judge, to serve the community in which I grew up in. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. Next, we will hear from Candidate Rolle.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judge Denise Rolle, and I want to first start by thanking the League of Women Voters and those responsible for putting together this program. I'm honored to serve as an associate judge on the Circuit Court for Prince George's County alongside my 3 other esteemed colleagues that are here today as well. And I am here today to continue serving our community with fairness, respect, and knowledge, all qualities gained from extensive experience as lawyers and now as judges. So before being appointed as a judge, my qualifications, as Judge Johnson said, underwent scrutiny by 13 bar associations, a panel of community members, and the governor. And this ensured that knowledge and understanding that I had of the law were sufficient to make informed decisions as a judge. I have over 20 years of legal experience, and during that time, I've tackled criminal cases, civil cases, family law cases. I've also served as the director of a legal aid department, namely the University of Maryland College Park, and I've also was responsible for managing the training and education of all judges and magistrates in the state. Since January 2023, I've served as a circuit court judge, upholding the rule of law with integrity and wisdom and sound legal knowledge. I'm a mother, an active member of my community, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, so public service is ingrained in me. I believe my diverse experiences provide me with a deep understanding of judicial responsibilities and the skills needed for success. Prince George's County is my home. Now, I'm born and raised in Miami, Florida. However, Prince George's County is where I live, where I work, and where I serve, and where I wish to continue to serve. Hopefully, my responses over the next hour will provide additional insight into my qualifications and my ability not just to serve, but to serve the county well. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Rolle. Next, we will hear from Candidate Sheehan.
Thank you. My name is Michael Sheehan, and I am Prince George's proud to be running for Judge of the Circuit Court. I'd like to begin by thanking the Prince George's County League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I'd also like to thank my fellow candidates, and I'd like to thank you, the viewers and the listeners, for taking your civic responsibility seriously and learning about the candidates in this election. Judicial elections don't receive much attention, and that's really a shame because they are just as important as any other election. You'll hear from my fellow candidates that they've been vetted, and that is true. For the most part, they were vetted by Larry Hogan appointees. But what's special about Maryland is that the state constitution gives you and us, the voters, a say in who sits on the bench. And so we get to take a closer look at the judges who are currently seeking re-election, and we get to decide whether their values align with ours. What I cannot do today is make any promises about how I would rule as a judge, because candidates for a judicial election are not permitted to make such statements. But what I will say is that if change is to occur, it requires acknowledging certain basic facts. It requires acknowledging that the share of incarcerated Black people in Maryland is on the rise, and the adult population in Maryland prisons is over 72% Black. Maryland is #1 in the nation for Black prison population, and that has to change. And if elected, what I can promise is that I will work in the system to at least get my fellow judges to acknowledge the role we play in perpetuating a cruel, archaic, and potentially racist system. I humbly ask that you vote for Michael Sheehan for Prince George's County Circuit Court Judge.
Thank you, Candidate Sheehan. Next, we'll hear from Candidate Simpkins.
Good afternoon. My name is Judge Sharina Cole Simpkins, and I firmly believe that experience matters when it comes to serving our communities with fairness and integrity. I've had the pleasure of serving my Prince George's County community for over 20 years. For 14 of those years, I dedicated my career to public service, as a criminal prosecutor at the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office, where I served under Jack Johnson, Angela Alsobrooks, as well as Glenn Ivey. During my tenure, I specialized in some of the most sensitive and challenging cases, including child abuse, sex crimes, domestic violence, child homicides. I've tried everything from traffic citations to child exploitation. During my tenure, I also served as the Assistant Chief of the District Court Division, as well as the Chief of the Juvenile Division at the State's Attorney's Office. My experience as a prosecutor not only enhanced my legal skills and my legal knowledge, but instilled in me a deep sense of compassion and justice. As stated previously by Judge Johnson and Judge Roll, there is a process to which we must undergo to become a judge. The application is very lengthy. It's a 40-page application. When you're done with it, they dig into our backgrounds as far as financial, our family's background, the work that we've done in the community and in the courts. So you're interviewed by 13 different specialty bar associations, and then you go to the commission to which the governors set up to find the best, most qualified candidates for him or she to meet with. I fortunately was able to meet with Governor Hogan in 2017, and I was appointed to the District Court of Prince George's County, and I served as a judge there for over 6.5 years. I presided over an array of thousands of criminal and civil cases, ensuring that everyone who entered my courtroom was treated with respect.
Thank you, candidate Simpkins. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from candidate Turner.
I just have a quick question for you because I noticed with Judge Simpkins that the timer wasn't working. You didn't put the timer up.
It was not.
Right. All right. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I am Judge Donnell Wilfred Turner, and it is my pleasure and honor to be able to meet with you all today and to speak with you and talk to you about my qualifications and why I'm asking the voters to reaffirm me as a judge of the Circuit Court for Prince George's County. I've been a judge for going on 2 years now. I was appointed in 2022. I'm not going to go into detail about the vetting process that my colleagues have talked about. We all went through the same very rigorous competitive vetting process to get where we are today, to get our appointments on the bench. One thing I will say in contrast is that our opponent has not been vetted. It is true that the Constitution allows someone to pay a sum of money to get to become a candidate and potentially to win a seat on the bench, but they've not been vetted by anyone. Secondly, we're all nonpartisan. We are not affiliated with any political party. Judge Simpkins was appointed by both Governor Hogan and Governor Moore. The rest of us were appointed by the governor who was seated at the time. So I wanted to make that very clear. I have over 30 years of experience as a lawyer. I graduated, I'm a lifelong Prince George's County resident. I graduated from Prince George's County Public Schools, the University of Maryland, and the University of Virginia School of Law. I've been an assistant state's attorney, an assistant U.S. attorney, a deputy state's attorney, and a principal deputy state's attorney. And I've worked on police reform and police accountability for a number of years before being appointed to the bench. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidate Turner. This concludes the opening statements. We appreciate all your statements this afternoon. We're going to start with the first question, and the first question will go to candidate Rowe. Candidate Rowe, what are your unique qualities that make you the best candidate for judgeship? And can you provide an example of a case or legal issue where your judiciary philosophy was tested and how you approached it?
Okay, first off, So I thought we were going in alphabetical order, but I don't mind answering the question first. But I just want to get a repeat of the question. So you want to know my judicial philosophy?
We are going in alphabetical order. You're next in line. I will repeat the question. What are your unique qualities that make you the best candidate for the judgeship? And can you provide an example of a case or a legal issue where your judicial philosophy was tested and how you approached it?
Okay, so my unique qualities, I believe, is honestly the experience that I have. So prior to becoming a judge, I had litigation experience. In addition to being a litigator, I also was the manager of judicial education at the Maryland Administrative Office of the Courts, which gave me insight as to not only the processes and procedures of how the judiciary works, but a firsthand and a first chair seat as to how and why the judiciary runs the way that it runs. That is unparalleled experience compared to anybody else that is running. So that's first off. And so I think those combined experiences, in addition to me being a magistrate, gives me unique qualifications to be able to know what this job is, in addition to know what this job is not. And I feel like I test those characteristics daily. Daily, I have to be fair. Daily, I have to be impartial. And so it's not just on one case that I use those qualities, but every single day I use the skills that I learned as a magistrate, as an administrator, and for judicial education, and as a lawyer to ensure fair and equitable justice to each one that comes before.
Our next candidate, Candidate Sheehan, your question is the same. What are your unique qualities that make you the best candidate for this judgeship? And can you provide an example or a case or legal issue where your judicial philosophy was tested and how you approached it?
Thank you very much. I think two of the most important traits that a judge can have are integrity and impartiality. I do want to just correct the way you phrase that question. It may lead the audience to believe that I am one of the sitting judges. I am not. I am challenging the sitting judges. But the way that I've demonstrated my integrity and impartiality, I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I am a current tax attorney. And in that capacity, I have heard numerous appeals filed by taxpayers. And in each of those appeals, even though I am working for the state, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I hear what evidence they have to say, and I make a determination that is supported by the facts and the law, regardless of who comes before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Sheehan. Our next candidate, Simpkins, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So 6 years ago, I became a district court judge, and it was not a lifelong ambition, but an interest that evolved over 14 years of my public service career at the time. In 2023, I was appointed to the circuit court bench. But my journey as a district court judge, I certainly knew, or as a prosecutor, I knew that what a judge was and what a judge did. But over that past 6 years, it was an evolutionary experience that allowed me to comprehend what it's like to be a judge. Early on, I was confronted with the reality of judging, and I can remember being faced with my first hard decision where there was no right answer or little guidance except conflicting views that were before me. And in that instance, I learned what judging was about. If the parties could agree, they wouldn't need me. And so I knew that I had to have the ability to be decisive, which is one of the most important traits of being an effective judge. As a judge, I learned the importance of developing and maintaining a thick skin.
Thank you, Candidate Simpkins.
Simpkins.
Our next candidate is Candidate Turner. The same question. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Sure. What are your unique qualities that make you the best candidate for this judgeship? And can you provide an example of a case or a legal issue where your judicial philosophy was tested and how you approached it?
Well, I think I possess a couple of very unique qualities. First is my experience. As I mentioned, I've been proud of being appointed to the bench. I practiced law for approximately 30 years. As a practitioner, I tried well over 100 jury trials in state and federal courts, including federal courts throughout the country. I also bring a great deal of compassion, empathy to my position on the bench as a judge. I think one of the greater challenges that faces judges is mental illness. We get a lot of litigants who deal with mental illness. There are members of my family who have suffered from mental illness, and having an opportunity to see the kinds of issues that they deal with up close, I think makes me very empathetic and very compassionate, and makes me a better judge. So I think those are two very important qualities that stand out and separate me.
Thank you, candidate Turner.
Okay.
Next, we're going to start with our second question, and I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Angelo.
Well, I'm sorry. Did I get to answer the first question?
Yeah. Candidate Johnson, may you answer the first question?
Oh, so sorry.
Oh, I know I was first, but please don't forget about me.
Okay, candidate Johnson, would you like for me to repeat the first question?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. Forgive me, please.
No problem. I think one of the most important qualities, and Judge Turner spoke to this, is empathy and compassion. One of the hardest tasks you have as a judge is when you have to sentence someone. And sometimes it may be, for lack of a better word, a cold-blooded murderer, but other times it may be someone who maybe had too much to drink and eventually led to someone's death. And so you are speaking to both families, and you have to have not only the legal skill, but you have to have the compassion to know that you are not only weighing the value of someone's life, but you're also weighing redemption of someone else's life. And those are tools that you have to possess as a judge. In addition, as a lifelong resident of the county, I know the community, being a part of the community. My mother is Panamanian, so even knowing the Latin community and knowing how things work, so when people come before you, you're not a stranger to their life.
Thank you, candidate Johnson. Now I will turn it over to my co-moderator, Angelo.
Again, as I already stated, I'm Angelo Pais Estrada. I'm a current undergraduate honors program student at Bowie State University. And today I'm ready to ask questions to today's 7th Judicial Circuit Court candidates that will hopefully garner illicit responses. And so the first question I have is regarding juvenile justice. Candidate Sheehan, what is the current state of juvenile involvement in violent crime? Should a juvenile committing crime ever be classified or charged as an adult? And lastly, if not, what is your view on providing juvenile offenders with counseling/treatment programs and referrals to the Department of Social Services?
Thank you. I'd like to begin by saying that judges shouldn't be influenced by what the news is reporting. The news inflates statistics. The news inflates and provides sensationalized understanding of the current state of juvenile justice. Yes, juveniles, as they always have, commit certain offenses. What the state should not be doing is taking an overly punitive approach towards them. Could you quickly repeat the last part of your question?
So do you believe that a juvenile committed crime should ever be charged as an adult? And if not, what are your views on providing juvenile benefits for treatment programs?
The determination of whether a juvenile should be tried as an adult is a purely legal determination. Judges do not have any discretion. So I will not delve too deep into that question, but what I will say is that the legal system should be providing resources and services to our youth rather than taking a purely carceral approach.
Thank you. Candidate Simpkins, do you need me to repeat the question?
Please please and thank you. There may be parts of that question that as judges, as sitting judges, we are not able to have a platform on, but please repeat the question.
Absolutely. What is the current state of juvenile involvement in violent crime? Should a juvenile committed crime ever be classified or charged as an adult? And if not, what is your view on providing juveniles offenders with counseling/treatment programs and referrals to the Department of Social Services?
Well, what I can say to the question is judges can advocate for reforms within the legal system to mitigate racial biases and ensure equitable treatment for all individuals, to include juveniles, regardless of race or ethnicity. We have judges can play a pivotal role in promoting alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenses, diversion programs, restorative justice initiatives, and community-based rehabilitation efforts for juveniles.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Turner, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I don't. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I think what's important for judges to do is to balance a couple of things. I think the first priority when it comes to juveniles is rehabilitation. Judges have to look very closely at whether a juvenile can be rehabilitated, and that's the goal. That's the number one goal that judges should look at. But there's another, the other important consideration is accountability. Juveniles have to be held accountable for their actions. And then a third consideration is the safety of the community. All of those things have to be considered when judges are making decisions about juveniles. Restorative justice is extremely important. We want to look at those issues. But again, we have to balance those things and make a determination whether the judge can fashion something, a resolution, hopefully short of detention, that will lead a child to rehabilitation. One last thing I want to say is that whether a juvenile is charged as an adult or a child.
Thank you, Candidate Turner.
It is discretionary. The judges do have discretion. So it is not purely a legal decision.
Candidate Turner.
I just wanted to make that clear. That was an incorrect statement of the law.
Candidate Johnson, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. To speak to something when it comes to juveniles, one thing I think judges can do is community involvement. And I think about a situation I had maybe a few months back where there were involved kids from Crosland High School. So there was one individual who I had to sentence for a series of crimes that he had committed. And, one thing I left him with was, this is not the end of your life. This is your chance to turn things around. And that's juxtaposed against the fact that on the following Saturday, I was going to the Barnes Scott legal program started by 2 students from Crosland High School, and so you see the same situation. Both kids are going to the same school, but 2 kids have chosen a different avenue. And my best advice to children, and when you're a judge, is you have the opportunity to influence their life. So sometimes incarceration is not the answer, and sometimes it is. But you also want to let them know that this is also an opportunity for you to take control of your life if you choose to do so.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. Candidate Roll, would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm sorry, I was muted, please.
Okay. What is the current state of juvenile involvement in violent crime? Should a juvenile committed crime ever be classified or charged as an adult? And if not, what is your view on providing juvenile offenders with counseling/treatment programs and referrals to the Department of Social Services?
All right, so as a sitting judge, part of that question I cannot answer because I can't state as to what my position is on juveniles being charged as adults. However, I would like to correct a statement that was made by one of the other candidates as it relates to whether judges have discretion or not when it comes to whether or not juveniles are charged as adults. And in fact, judges do have discretion. That process is called either a transfer hearing or a waiver hearing, wherein it's the judge that hears arguments from both the state as well as the defense as to whether that child should be transferred to adult court or should be waived up to adult court or transferred down to juvenile court. As it relates to juveniles, I will say this, that it has to be a multifaceted approach. It's not just the court system that has to deal with this problem. We have to look into the causes of juvenile crime and the needs that that the individuals that are before us face. So if it's a situation with funding, if it's a situation with resources, different things of that nature. However, as a judge, our job is to ensure that our sentencing is fair and impartial to address that problem, as well as in addition to sentencing, we have to ensure that the community needs are being met as well as safety concerns.
Thank you. The next question I have is for candidate Simpkins. As you know, an increasing number of states are banning the sale of ghost guns. In addition, this past Tuesday, the Prince George's County Council introduced a new bill to crack down on ghost guns and other related untraceable weapons. Do you believe that this is a policy that Prince George's County should strongly embark on?
I cannot state any belief as a sitting judge as to anybody's policy. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question as much as I would love to. You do have to understand that as judges, we have to remain impartial, and we do not have platforms. It is against our judicial canon and oaths that we take as judges. So unfortunately, while I think that's an understandable question that one would want an answer to, we can't answer that as judges. Thank you.
Understood, candidate Simpkins. Candidate Turner, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir. I have the question. As Judge Simpkins said, I can't comment on what the county councils, their activities are, the legislation that they're considering or that they've passed. Our role as judges is to enforce the law. Whether it's the state legislature or the county council passes legislation, it is our jobs to enforce the law, and that's what we're there to do. So that's pretty much the only thing I could say in response to your question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidate Turner. Candidate Johnson, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Thank you, and I do appreciate your question. Understandably, citizens of our county have these concerns. I can't speak directly to the question, but what I'll say is that one thing that was spoken about earlier is that it's a community situation. When people come to us, they come to us at the end, and it's our job to figure out how to rehabilitate this person. But a lot of issues that are going on in the community have to be dealt with on the front end. And that takes for citizens to be involved, be involved in your schools, in your community, in your civic associations, in your homeowner associations, about, sort of taking control of your community to prevent some of the ills that people ask for judges to fix. And the judge's job is to try to mend the damage that has been done as much as possible. But we can't influence things that the community has to get out and be a part of.
Thank you, candidate Johnson. Candidate Roll, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir, I have the question. Thank you. And just as my esteemed colleagues, I'm unable to answer that question directly. However, I will say that as judges, our job is to be fair and impartial. Our job is not to have a position as to any type of legislation or policy that is enforced. That is being enacted by either the county or the state or the federal government. Once we step over that threshold into the courtroom, how we feel our personal beliefs are put in our pocket. And so whether or not we agree or disagree, it's our sole job to enforce any provisions or any policies that are made and to enforce them neutrally and just and fairly amongst anyone that comes before us.
All right, thank you, candidate Roll. Candidate Sheehan, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, could you please repeat the question? Thank you.
Okay. So as you may know, an increasing number of states are banning the sale of ghost guns. In addition, this past Tuesday, the Prince George's County Council introduced a new bill to crack down on ghost guns and other related untraceable weapons. Do you believe that this is a policy that Prince George's County should strongly embark on?
Okay, thank you very much for repeating the question. I agree with my fellow candidates that it would be inappropriate for any of us to weigh in on that question. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Sheehan.
Okay. Thank you, candidate Sheehan. Our next question will go to candidate Johnson. The question is, research indicates that women of color are overrepresented in prisons, being the largest population incarcerated. As a result, more prisons are being built to incarcerate these women. What are your thoughts on this issue? And are there programs to address this issue?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. What I will speak to is that as a judge, when someone comes before you, there's not every size, one shoe doesn't fit every size, right? You got to find different shoes to fit the people before you. And sometimes that calls for diversion programs, when you think of things such as people that are under addiction. And even younger and younger, you're seeing children under addiction. And you have parents pleading to you to do things that sometimes your hands are tied with. And part of dealing with a lot of these situations, I believe, as I said, is to, one, at the judge's part, is to correct and point somebody in the right direction as much as you can. And sometimes incarceration is the answer, but sometimes it's not. And you have to have the ability to discern which situation is before you. But again, I believe that a community as a whole, as someone who has lived in Prince George's County all my life, as a community as a whole, we all have to be involved at every level to make sure, one, that people are getting the right services, that people are getting health services, they're getting mental care. And sometimes people need food. There are a lot of issues that go into people that come before us. Like I said, we're the last rung, and our job is to fix the situation, but this happens at all levels.
Thank you, candidate Johnson. Next, candidate Rolle. Would you like for me to repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
Sure. Research indicates that women of color are overrepresented in prisons, being the largest population incarcerated. As a result, more prisons are being built to incarcerate these women. What are your thoughts on this issue? And are there programs to address the issue?
All right, well, first off, I'll be honest and tell you I'm not necessarily familiar with that research, because the research that I've seen shows that actually African-American men are the largest population of those incarcerated. However, there has been an uptick and a trend in increasing women of color in prisons. And again, I think it's a multifaceted approach. We have to understand the why, we have to understand the how, and we have to come together as a community to kind of deal with those things. And so a big part of that is making sure that women have what they need, including the mental health, the physical health, and also parenting skills and different things of that nature. As it relates to programs, there are programs for women and for incarcerated women, but clearly there is not enough programs out there to kind of deal with the issue. So we as a community need to get together to figure out what the needs of women are and try to come up with programs and funding to deal with and address those issues. And advocate for them.
Thank you, candidate Rolle.
Thank you.
Our next candidate, Sheehan, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. As my fellow candidate said, I think it is important that we get resources and rehabilitative services to these communities. Your question touches on some of the points I raised in my introduction, that Maryland is leading the nation in the percentage of our African-American prison population. We are one of the bluest of the blue states, and we look like we're Alabama or Mississippi when it comes to incarcerating Black people. I think, yes, there are steps that the community can take on the front end, but unless we acknowledge that judges are part of this system, until we acknowledge that sentences that judges impose, not just when it comes to the length of those sentences, when it comes to the propriety of those sentences, those are questions that judges need to ask themselves, whether they're perpetuating that system. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Sheehan. Next, candidate Simpkins, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Sure, candidate Simpkins would love for you to repeat the question. Thank you.
Research indicates that women of color are overrepresented in prisons, being the largest population incarcerated. As a result, more prisons are being built to incarcerate these women. What are your thoughts on this issue? And are there programs to address the issue?
Well, I think it requires a holistic approach. I think you have to look at why someone is before you, what led up to them being charged with that crime. It could be something that's going on that is a community need, that is a household need, that is a mental need within that individual, and trying to find the help and the resources to address those needs. You do have to temper that with holding people accountable, but I don't feel that you should hold someone accountable without giving them the proper tools, resources, and community support needed so that they can have successful and fruitful lives thereafter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Turner, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am. Thank you very much. First, I want to agree with Judge Roll. I think that not just women of color, but men of color also are overrepresented in our prisons. I think that as a judge, one of the things that's important for us to look at is always our alternatives to incarceration. That's for men and women. So, for instance, we have certain diversion programs at our courthouse, and there are diversion programs across the state that are alternatives to incarceration when the type of crime and the background of the individual warrants it. So that's something that we should always take into consideration.
Thank you, candidate Turner. Angelo, next question.
Yes, candidate Roll. Was there ever a time where your decision has been or would be influenced by a person's position or status in life? And what steps would you take to improve access to justice or ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status, receive fair and equal treatment in the courtroom?
All right, read the second part for me again. I know the answer to the first part.
What steps would you take to improve access to justice or ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status, receive fair and equal treatment in your courtroom?
Okay, so the answer to the first part is no. I've never had a situation where I had to consider or would consider someone's status, be it economic, color, race, or anything of that nature when I'm making a decision as a judicial officer. That is completely inappropriate, and that is against the judicial ethics canons. That's one. Two, what I would do to ensure that all parties have access to justice is I try to say that I have a policy in my courtroom that everyone and is not equal, but I practice equality. So I think it's a difference between equity and being equal. Equal means that you give everyone the same thing. Having equity means that you allow individuals to get what they need, which sometimes may be more. So, for example, you can open the courtroom doors to everyone, but if someone has a language barrier, someone has an education barrier, then there is still not equal. So you still have to give people the additional services they need, be it an interpreter, be it going slowly, being that you may have to ensure that they have additional services or resources needed to have equal access to justice.
Thank you, candidate Roll. Candidate Sheehan, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Was there ever a time where your decision has been or would be influenced by a person's position or status in life? And what steps would you take to improve access to justice to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background or social economic status, receive fair and equal treatment in your courtroom?
To your first question, I'll interpret it, as if we're looking in the future when I am on the bench. No, my decision-making will not be influenced by anyone's status in life. That being said, Judges do need to acknowledge the person's background and the circumstances that might have led someone to the courtroom, and give careful consideration to those circumstances when making decisions. To your second question, could you once again quickly repeat it?
So what steps would you take to improve access to justice and ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background, can receive fair and equal treatment in your courtroom?
Thank you. I would agree with what Judge Roll said. It means being fair and impartial. And when someone does have barriers, whether it be language barriers, economic barriers to the courtroom, the judiciary and the judicial system should be open to maybe knocking down some of those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Sheehan. Candidate Simpkins, would you like me to repeat the question?
Please and thank you.
Was there ever a time where your decision has been or would be influenced by a person's position or status in life? And what steps would you take to improve access to justice or to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status, receive fair and equal treatment in your courtroom?
So there has never, nor would there ever be a time that I would ever consider someone's background or status in making a decision that would be unfair and against our judicial canons. However, this job cannot be done without compassion, without understanding where people are coming from, where they've been, and where they're going. That's first and foremost. And so you have to have compassion when you're looking at litigants before you and determining and fashioning sentences and decisions. As far as the second part of the question, I sit on the Equal Justice Commission, dealing with language barriers for the courts, the Language Council, ensuring that all members of our community has an equal leg when coming to court by being able to speak in their native tongue. And that's very important because not everyone is an English speaker. And so it's important to have interpreters that are well-versed in vast languages so that people are comfortable to express the needs to the court in their language, and that we're able to express what's going on back to them in theirs.
Thank you, candidate Simpkins.
Thank you.
Candidate Turner, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Thank you very much. I have never considered a person's status in life or their stature in life in making decisions on the bench, nor will I ever consider a person's status or stature. Now, I think the opposite. I think that the next question you asked was about access to courts, which I think is sort of the opposite side of that. Like Judge Simpkins, I too sit on the Equal Justice Committee for the Judicial Council, and I also sit on the Access to Courts Committee. And one of the things, so we look at things like people with disabilities, we look at people with language barriers, we look at people who don't have the resources to afford attorneys. We look at all of those things to make sure that there is equity and fairness in giving people access to the courts. My goal as a judge, or my what I aspire to, is to look at every case that I have, every litigant with color blindness, gender blindness, and status blindness, and that's what I try to do.
All right. Thank you, candidate Turner. Candidate Johnson, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Thank you. What I say is that, court is like life, right? Everyone wants a fair shot. And I think that's one of the most important things, that people get a fair opportunity before you. When it comes to legal services for underprivileged individuals, both Judge Turner and myself serve on the Community Legal Services Board. And as a judge, your job is not to be someone's attorney. You try to get someone the help as much as they need. For instance, I had a difficult gentleman, I can say a couple weeks ago, that refused to get an attorney on a very serious crime. And we ultimately got to a point where, yes, he wanted legal counsel, because I told him, I said, listen, if something happened to your foot, you're going to go see a doctor. And he laughed. He said, you're right. So I said, okay, so this is something where you need a lawyer. And he agreed. So sometimes, people don't understand the very serious nature of something they may be in, that you need legal representation. And sometimes you have to make sure that people fully understand that by not having legal representation, you're putting yourself, for lack of a better word, in a bind. So I'll just say that when it comes to the court, everyone just wants to make sure they've had the opportunity to be heard. And there's no more satisfied party than knowing they've been heard, even if you don't decide in their way. There are people who've gone to jail and said, you know what, thank you for allowing me to speak. And so, people just want that opportunity.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. Next question will go to Candidate Sheehan. Candidate Sheehan, what are your views on diversion programs to address the mental health crisis associated with persons being arrested and incarcerated?
Thank you very much. Diversion programs are a proven, effective means to provide an alternative to incarceration. Too many times, we look at something someone has done without looking at what led them there, be it mental illness, addiction. The circumstances that brought someone to court are important in understanding what services we can provide them and the type of rehabilitation they need. If the only tool we use in our arsenal is incarceration, we are not, we're failing as a state. And so judges should, within their ability, when it is legally permissible and when it is appropriate, should look for alternatives to incarceration, including these programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Simpkins,
Thank
would you like for me to repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
Yes. What are your views on diversion programs to address the mental health crisis associated with persons being arrested and incarcerated?
Diversion programs can help alleviate the burden on the criminal justice system by diverting nonviolent offenders away from incarceration and towards more appropriate and effective forms of intervention. This not only saves taxpayer dollars, but it also allows resources to be allocated more efficiently towards addressing underlying issues driving criminal behavior. Diversion programs offer compassionate and pragmatic approaches to addressing behavior problems and substance abuse issues within the criminal justice system by prioritizing rehabilitation and promoting positive outcomes for individuals while enhancing the public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Candidate Turner, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned before, I think mental health is one of the biggest challenges that we have as judges, those of us who are in the involved in the court system. The statistics show that a very large percentage of those who are in our jails and our prisons are suffering from mental illness. So I think that diversion programs are extremely important to address those issues. We have a couple of diversion programs that I think do a pretty good job of addressing mental illness. We have drug court. We also have veterans court in our jurisdiction. Drug court, a lot of people who resort to drug or have drug addictions or substance abuse problems, they resort to narcotics in order to medicate themselves, to self-medicate. Also, we've seen that veterans who are dealing with a lot of issues also have mental health issues. So I think those programs are critical, and those are programs that we consider every day.
Thank you, Candidate Turner. Thank you. Next question, Candidate Johnson, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am. I think that mental health is a paramount issue in our community. As a magistrate, something that I often dealt with was women going through postpartum depression. And you would have that situation in front of you, And at that level, you can't really deal with those services. But as I've been appointed as a judge, you're able to better guide people and have the resources to get individuals the help and assistance that they need. And again, I always believe this is a holistic approach from community. That we have to be involved on all levels. Our mental health facilities have to be top notch, and things of that nature in order to better service our community. So I'm a strong believer in mental health. I am on the juvenile drug court, and I often tell individuals, our society, because we are so ingrained to sort of letting things go, whether it's alcohol or now marijuana, people tend to abuse it in order to take care of other issues, and those individuals come before me. And you have to find programs, diversion programs, how to deal with their emotions. I often say that, it's not that we're an emotionless society, we're a society that does not know how to control our emotions, and we often do destructive things that lead you to court.
Thank you, candidate Johnson. Next, candidate, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
Sure. What are your views on diversion programs to address the mental health crisis associated with persons being incarcerated and arrested?
So I think diversion programs work. However, I do think as a judge, you have to ensure that you employ them under the appropriate situations. Everyone is not a candidate for a diversion program, and I think we all have to be honest about that. However, if a person is a candidate for a diversion program, I do think that it is beneficial to both the person as well as to the community. So diversion programs, again, as we all know, offer alternatives to traditional criminal justice responses such as arrest and incarceration, and it allows the individual to deal with whatever mental health needs that they have. As judges, a lot of times we see the individuals that come before the court. The primary root of the issue sometimes deals with something dealing with a mental health disorder that has not been served or has not been addressed. Diversions program can assist with that. They also, from my experience, can assist by reducing recidivism, as well as reducing the overcrowding of jails and prisons, and also reduce with budgetary items, because it's cheaper to treat mental health than it is sometimes to incarcerate individuals.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn it over to Angelo to ask question 8 to our candidates.
Yes, candidate Simpkins, what is it about your background and experience that have prepared you to handle domestic violence cases, and how have you applied those experiences? Can't hear you.
Not a problem. Sorry about that. Thank you for that question. When I started in the state's attorney's office in 2002, I was one of the domestic violence attorneys. As I matriculated through the office, I served in the special victims unit, and where I heard domestic violence, more serious domestic violence cases dealing with homicides, strangulations, and things of that nature. So it is something that I'm very passionate about. I think, I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
How have you applied those experiences?
Thank you. And so it's as a judge, you have to accept people how they come to you in court, and you have to understand the cycle of violence and where people may be at in that cycle. And so as a prosecutor, I'm able to, as a former prosecutor, I'm able to use those experiences and knowledge as a judge in dealing with victim of domestic violence and sexual assault abuse.
Thank you, candidate Simpkins. Candidate Turner, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, sir, if you want. Thank you.
Okay. What is it about your background and experience that have prepared you to handle domestic violence cases, and how have you applied those experiences?
All right, thank you for that question. Well, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm a former prosecutor. I was a state prosecutor. I was assistant state attorney for 5 years, and I was also a assistant U.S. attorney for 5 years. And in both of those capacities, I I investigated and prosecuted domestic violence cases. I'm also a former deputy state's attorney. I spent 6 years as a deputy and a principal deputy state's attorney, in which I oversaw those particular the offices regarding sexual assault, domestic violence, and so forth. So I had a chance to work with a lot of attorneys who focused on those cases. So so I've had many trials regarding that domestic violence. As a judge, you know, I can pull from those experiences, but also I think it's important to recognize the individual that is before you, to show compassion and understanding, and that's what I try to do as a judge.
Thank you, Candidate Turner. Candidate Johnson, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I think part of my background, I'll speak to my most recent background as a magistrate. As I said, I've dealt with over 12,000 individuals, and always when it comes to family law, you know, I don't care if you are the maintenance man or the CEO, it's hard to control your emotions. And you're dealing with people in front of you that are frightened, they're scared, it's their first time in court, and you have to make sure they're getting the opportunity to be heard. But you also have to stick to the law. You know, one of the things that you are a part of the vetting process is to make sure that you remain unbiased. Because if you let your emotions rule your decisions, it becomes easier and easier to sort of tip the scale towards, well, I don't like this person, or I like that person. So part of when it comes to domestic violence, of hearing the whole situation and make a determination based on fairness and the law.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. Candidate Roll, would you like me to repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
What is it about your background and experiences that have prepared you to handle domestic violence cases, and how have you applied those experiences?
Okay, so as I stated in my opening, part of my 20-year legal experience includes working on family law cases. And that means that I've had an opportunity. I've actually represented both sides on domestic violence cases for protective orders, both the respondent as well as the petitioner in those cases. And one of the things that you learn is that you, one, can't judge a book by its cover, but two, you have to wait to hear all of the facts. And you go into those type of situations with compassion and understanding and meeting the person where they are. And this is something that as judges, we may deal with every day, or even as attorneys, as practitioners, we get hundreds of cases, but understanding that this one case is really the most important thing to that one person at that one time. And so understanding that and having the ability to recognize that. But also I talked about my experience at the Administrative Office of the Courts, training judges and magistrates. And one of the trainings that we did, we would do a domestic violence training called Comings and Goings. And it really would put the judges in a position to be a victim of domestic violence and see what it's like and understand their thought process and understand why they make some of the decisions that they make, so you could take those skills back to the bench when making decisions.
Thank you, Candidate Roll. Candidate Sheehan, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. Like my fellow candidates said, I think it's important to have compassion, empathy in these sorts of cases. And I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We thank you, candidates. This concludes the questions, and we appreciate your comments and your viewpoints. Next, we're going to open it up for your closing statements. You will have 1 minute for your closing statements. We would like to start with Candidate Turner.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Clark. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for Prince George's County once again for giving us an opportunity to speak to you all today. I want to thank my my colleagues on the bench. I also want to thank Mr. Sheehan for being here today. I want to remind the voters that I've been practicing law I practiced law for over 30 years before I was became a judge 2 years ago. I've been a public servant for over 20 years in Prince George's County. I've been an adjunct professor in Prince George's County for 19 years. In addition to being an attorney, I have done a lot of giving back to the community including I'm very passionate about golf. So I worked with the First Tee Junior Golf Program for over 10 years. I've worked with mock trial programs for 20 years now. So my goal is to give back to the community and to really serve a community that has served me well all my life. And so
thank you, candidate Turner.
Thank you very much.
Next, candidate Johnson.
Thank you. One, I want to thank everyone, including the League of Women Voters, that allowed us this opportunity to introduce ourselves to the voters. Myself, like my colleagues, have over 20 years of legal experience. But, I'll say something that I said in my investiture was that, the hard work that I put into rise to this position, it didn't represent just me. It represented everyone that contributed to not only my legal career, but my upbringing. And as a resident of Prince George's County, to this day, I'll say it has been an absolute pleasure to serve the community in which I grew up, that made me who I am. And hopefully myself, along with my current judges, will continue to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Johnson. Candidate Rolle.
So yes, I would again like to thank everyone for putting this together. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, as well as to the moderators and the facilitators. So for me, in closing, I would like to say that experience matters. So again, with over 20 years of legal experience, I'm equipped to proudly serve and continue to serve as a circuit court judge in this county. I think my extensive experience provides insight into the essence of judging and knowing what a judge is, but more importantly, what a judge is not, and being able to recognize that. So being a judge transcends through political affiliations. It's not about being a Republican or a Democrat, or it's not about wielding power or seeking the easy path. It demands careful consideration due to the profound responsibilities that we have and that people entrust us with daily. So a judge embodies fairness, compassion, and knowledge, all things that we've talked about throughout the last hour, upholding the integrity of the judicial system and serving the public selflessly. And so these are values I've learned through both my professional and personal experiences. And so because of this experience, I believe that I am well equipped to continue to serve as a judge, and I will be honored for the public's vote to continue in this capacity.
Thank you, candidate Rolle. Candidate Sheehan.
Thank you. And thank you once again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Thank you to the viewers and listeners for listening in and learning all about the candidates for Prince George's County Circuit Court. Once again, I do want to humbly ask you to vote for Michael Sheehan for Prince George's County Circuit Court Judge. One thing that you've heard over these past hour and a half or so is that judges are supposed to be apolitical, and that is true. And I would encourage everyone to look at all 5 of our campaign finance disclosures, as well as our own donations made over the year, and use that as a determination to see whether your values align with ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Simpkins.
All right. So again, my name is Shereen Nicole Simpkins, and I proudly serve as a Prince George's County Circuit Court judge. Again, I have the experience as a district court judge of 6.5 years and as a prosecutor for over 14 years. And becoming a judge was driven by a profound sense of justice and a commitment to upholding the rule of law, as well as serving my community. It allows me to do something that I love, and that's the courtroom, serving my community and upholding the laws and making a change and being a catalyst of change for my community. Each and every single one of my colleagues, the judges that are here, with the exception of Mr. Sheehan, has been vetted by bar associations, were endorsed by Governor Moore, as well as endorsed by the Maryland State Bar Association, who knows what it takes to have the legal temperament and experience necessary to be a decisive and compassionate judge. And I think that's what our county needs: compassion and experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'd like to thank all of you for your closing remarks and also for your responses to our questions. We'd like to also thank our viewers who are on our YouTube channel. And we'd like to give special thanks to our forum producer, Mimi. Thank you so much. And also our league president, Gloria Johnson. So it's back to Gloria. And thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Gloria?
Good afternoon again. This concludes this afternoon's program. Again, I want to thank all of the candidates. I also want to thank our moderator and vice president, Dr. Clark Dixon, and our student co-moderator, Angelo Price Estrada. You will note, members of the audience and participants, there are 5 candidates presented today, but there are only 4 vacancies. You will have to make the determination. The goal of the League of Women Voters is to educate the electorate. The League of Women Voters of Prince George's County hopefully has given you, the voters of Prince George's, the opportunity to observe deliveries, hear the candidates' views and their responses so that you can make an informed decision. Our job is to educate the electorate. We hope we have fulfilled that obligation and goal today. Here is general information on elections in Prince George's County. We urge you to go and commit democracy at the election on May 14th, which is the primary election. It will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Early voting for the primary election is Thursday, May 2nd through Thursday, May 9, from 7 to 8 p.m. General elections in the county will, of course, be November 5th from 7 until 8 p.m. Early voting for the general election is Thursday, October 24th, 2024, through Thursday, October 31, 2024, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Go out, get active, get involved. Please do not sit at home and let others make the decision for you. Get out and vote, please. And thank you.